The year is 1897. A single photograph was taken on a large farm property. This picture held a secret that would go unnoticed for decades. The image itself seemed ordinary at first glance. It showed a wide-open field, a distant tree line, and a seemingly empty landscape. The initial impression was of a routine agricultural record. Nothing about it suggested mystery or intrigue, but time has a way of revealing what the human eye cannot see in the moment. The photograph was captured on an archived photographic plate. These plates were the standard method of recording images in the late 1800s. They were made of glass coated with light-sensitive chemicals. When properly stored, they could preserve images for more than a century. This particular plate showed a farmer's field stretching toward a line of trees on the horizon. The sky was pale. The ground was flat. Everything appeared normal and unremarkable. Historians and photo analysts would later study this plate for its detail. They were not looking at the field itself. They were looking at the tree line. There was a small, dark shadow there. At first it seemed like nothing more than a trick of light or a natural feature of the landscape. But as they examined it more closely, they realized something startling. This shadow was not a natural feature. It was a shape of human design. This discovery would rewrite the local history of the northwestern settlement region. The photographer was a man known as Farmer Elijah. He was a meticulous man who documented his property for land deeds and posterity. In those days, photographs were expensive and rare. People did not take them casually. Every image had a purpose. Farmer Elijah used his camera to record the boundaries of his land. He photographed his fields to prove ownership. He captured images of his crops to track their growth. His work was filed away in the County Historical Society. This is where the tension begins. He recorded something he did not see or did not note. Farmer Elijah lived on a large piece of land in the northwestern settlement region. This area was known for its dense forests and fertile soil. It was a place where farmers and loggers competed for space. The land was valuable. Disputes over property lines were common. Farmer Elijah wanted to protect his claim. That is why he took so many photographs. He wanted proof of what belonged to him. The photograph in question was taken in the summer of 1897. It was a clear day. The light was good. Farmer Elijah set up his camera at the eastern edge of his property. He pointed it west toward the tree line. He exposed the plate for several seconds. Then he packed up his equipment and went back to his work. He did not know that he had captured something unusual. He did not look closely at the tree line. He was focused on the field itself. Decades passed. The photograph remained in the archives of the County Historical Society. It was stored in a wooden box with hundreds of other plates. Nobody looked at it. Nobody thought it was special. It was just another image of farmland from the 1800s. The world moved on. Farmer Elijah grew old and passed away. His land was sold. The new owners did not know about the photograph. The tree line remained a mystery. In the 1960s, a woman named archivist Beatrice began working at the County Historical Society. Her job was to catalog old plates and preserve them for future generations. She was careful and thorough. She handled each plate with gloves. She cleaned them gently. She recorded their details in a ledger. One day, she came across the plate from Farmer Elijah's collection. She decided to digitize it. Digitization was a new process at the time. It involved photographing the old plates with modern equipment. This allowed for extreme magnification. It was a way to see details that were invisible to the naked eye. Archivist Beatrice placed the plate under a high-resolution scanner. She adjusted the settings. She started the scan. The image appeared on her screen. She zoomed in on different sections. She examined the field. She examined the sky. Then she zoomed in on the tree line. That is when she saw it. There was a structure there. It was tall and thin. It had a geometric shape. It did not look like a tree or a rock. It looked like something built by human hands. Archivist Beatrice was shocked. She called her supervisor. She showed him the image. He agreed that it was unusual. They decided to investigate further. They brought in an expert named Investigator Mark. He was a specialist in historical photography. He had studied thousands of old images. He knew how to identify objects in low-resolution pictures. He examined the plate under a microscope. He confirmed what archivist Beatrice had seen. There was a structure at the tree line. The object was identified by Investigator Mark as a tall, thin wooden frame. It stood at least 20 feet high. It had a triangular base and a narrow top. It did not resemble any known building type from the northwestern settlement region. It was not a barn. It was not a silo. It was not a fence post. Its design was complex and unusual. It looked like it had been built for a specific purpose. But what was that purpose? Investigator Mark took measurements. He analyzed the angles. He compared the structure to other known objects from the 1890s. He could not find a match. He consulted with architects and historians. They were all puzzled. Nobody had seen anything like it before. The structure was too deliberate to be a random construction. It was too well made to be a simple fence or marker. It had to have been built for a reason. Archivist Beatrice and her team decided to dig deeper. They went through Farmer Elijah's personal papers. They found his journals. They found his letters. They found his financial records. Most of it was routine. But then they found something interesting. In his journal from the summer of 1897, Farmer Elijah wrote a single, cryptic entry. He mentioned hearing unsettling sounds near the western edge of his field. He did not describe the sounds in detail. He only said they were strange and made him uneasy. This tied the date of the photo directly to an unusual event. The team now had a timeline. The photograph was taken in the summer of 1897. Farmer Elijah heard strange sounds around the same time. The structure appeared in the tree line. These facts were connected. But how? What was happening at the western edge of his property? Why did he not investigate the sounds? Why did he not mention the structure in his journal? Further research was led by a man named historian Dr. Owen. He was an expert on the history of the northwestern settlement region. He had written several books about land disputes and territorial conflicts. He believed the structure was connected to a larger story. He began looking into the history of the area around Farmer Elijah's land. He studied old maps. He read old newspapers. He examined land deeds and court records. Historian Dr. Owen discovered something important. The western edge of Farmer Elijah's property bordered a piece of land called the Wilderness Reserve Tract. This tract was supposed to be protected by the government. It was set aside for conservation. No logging or development was allowed. But in the 1890s, there were rumors that the rules were being broken. Companies were trying to find ways to access the timber. They wanted to cut down the trees and sell the wood. It was valuable. There was a lot of money to be made. Historian Dr. Owen suggested the structure was a temporary observation post. It was placed at the boundary of Farmer Elijah's land and the disputed Wilderness Reserve Tract. This introduced the idea of secret, government-level surveillance. Or perhaps it was not the government at all. Perhaps it was a private company trying to spy on the protected land. The structure was hidden in the tree line so it would not be noticed. It was tall so that someone could see far into the distance. It was temporary so that it could be removed quickly if discovered. The investigation now focused on who built the observation post and why. What was so important about this remote patch of land that someone constructed a hidden, temporary tower to watch it? The team had many questions. They needed more evidence. They needed to find out who was operating in the area in 1897. They needed to connect the structure to a specific group or company. Historian Dr. Owen spent months digging through archives. He traveled to different libraries. He requested documents from government agencies. He interviewed the descendants of old families in the region. Slowly, he began to piece together the story. He discovered that in the 1890s there was a major conflict brewing. It was called the Great Timber Dispute. This conflict involved several companies and the government. It was about access to the forests in the northwestern settlement region. The most promising controversy was escalated. Historian Dr. Owen's research uncovered the details of the Great Timber Dispute. At the center of the conflict was a powerful organization known as the Northern Railroad Company. This company was building a railway line through the region. They needed timber to construct the tracks and the stations. They needed wood for fuel. They needed access to the forests. But much of the land was protected. The government had set aside the Wilderness Reserve Tract. The Northern Railroad Company was frustrated. They wanted the timber. They were willing to bend the rules to get it. The Northern Railroad Company decided to take matters into their own hands. They hired a special unit called the Railroad Surveyor Unit. This unit was made up of skilled surveyors and engineers. Their job was to map the land and find opportunities for the company. But they also had a secret mission. They were supposed to find weak points in the property lines. They were supposed to look for ways to access the protected timber without getting caught. This was illegal. It was a form of corporate espionage. The observation post was built by the Railroad Surveyor Unit. They were surveilling the property lines to find a weak point for trespass and illegal logging. They set up the structure at the Treeline so they could watch Farmer Elijah's land and the Wilderness Reserve Tract at the same time. They needed to know when the coast was clear. They needed to know when they could move in and start cutting trees. The structure was temporary because they did not want to leave evidence. Once their survey was complete, they planned to take it down. The true nature of the shape in the photo was revealed. It was not just a wooden frame. It was a tripod-mounted signal reflector used for long-distance, nonverbal communication between surveyors. The Railroad Surveyor Unit used these devices to send messages across great distances. They would position a reflector on top of the tower. Then they would use mirrors or flags to send signals. Another surveyor, miles away, would see the signals and respond. This allowed them to coordinate their activities without being overheard. It was a military-like operation. The use of this specific piece of equipment confirmed the operation was covert and military-like. Historian Dr. Owen found evidence of the signal reflector in old company documents. The Northern Railroad Company kept detailed records of their surveying equipment. They listed the tripods, the mirrors, and the signal flags. They recorded where the equipment was deployed and when. The records matched the location of Farmer Elijah's property. The records matched the summer of 1897. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. The focus now shifted from a strange mystery to a clear act of corporate espionage. The photo was no longer a ghost image. It was a piece of legal evidence. The structure was standing there, not as a phantom, but as a deliberate symbol of a territorial invasion. The Northern Railroad Company had been caught. They had been surveilling private property. They had been planning to steal timber from protected land. The photograph proved it. But what happened next? Did Farmer Elijah know about the surveillance? Did he report it to the authorities? Did the Northern Railroad Company get away with their plan? Historian Dr. Owen continued his research. He found more documents. He found court records from 1898. There was a lawsuit. Farmer Elijah had filed a complaint against the Northern Railroad Company. He claimed they had trespassed on his land. He claimed they had damaged his property. He claimed they had been spying on him. The lawsuit went to trial. The Northern Railroad Company denied everything. They said they had never been on Farmer Elijah's land. They said the accusations were false. But Farmer Elijah had evidence. He had the photograph. He had his journal entry about the strange sounds. He had witnesses who had seen surveyors in the area. The judge reviewed the evidence. He ruled in favor of Farmer Elijah. The Northern Railroad Company was ordered to pay damages. They were ordered to stay away from the Wilderness Reserve Tract. The plan to steal timber was stopped. The photograph had saved Farmer Elijah's land. It had protected the Wilderness Reserve Tract. It had exposed the Northern Railroad Company's illegal activities. But Farmer Elijah did not know what he had captured when he took the picture. He did not see the structure in the tree line. He only discovered it later when he reviewed his plates. By then, the railroad surveyor unit had already taken down the observation post. They had removed the evidence. But the photograph remained. It was proof of what had happened. The archived photographic plate proved that local people like Farmer Elijah were being watched by powerful companies. It showed that the history of the northwestern settlement region was full of hidden details. It reminded people that photographs can reveal more than we realize. They can capture moments we do not notice. They can preserve evidence we do not see. They can tell stories that would otherwise be forgotten. The story of the photograph spread. It became a local legend. People in the northwestern settlement region talked about it for years. They wondered what other secrets were hidden in old photographs. They wondered what other mysteries were waiting to be discovered. They started looking at their own family photos more carefully. They started examining the backgrounds. They started asking questions. Archivist Beatrice continued her work at the County Historical Society. She digitized hundreds more plates. She found other interesting images. Some showed unusual buildings. Some showed forgotten events. Some showed people who had been lost to history. Each photograph was a window into the past. Each one told a story. She realized that her work was important. She was preserving history. She was uncovering truths. Investigator Mark wrote a report about the signal reflector. He published it in a historical journal. Other researchers read it. They became interested in the Great Timber Dispute. They started their own investigations. They found more evidence of corporate espionage in the 1890s. They discovered that the Northern Railroad Company was not the only one involved. Other companies had used similar tactics. The problem was widespread. Historian Dr. Owen wrote a book about the case. He called it The Hidden Tower. It told the full story of the photograph and the Great Timber Dispute. It explained how Farmer Elijah fought back against the Northern Railroad Company. It showed how one photograph could change history. The book became popular. It was used in schools. It was read by people who were interested in local history. It inspired others to study old photographs. The lesson from this story is clear. Old photographs are valuable. They contain information that we might not see at first. They deserve careful study. They deserve preservation. Every photograph is a piece of history. Every photograph has a story to tell. We just need to look closely. We just need to ask the right questions. Do you have any old photos with unexamined backgrounds? Have you looked at the edges of the frame? Have you zoomed in on the details? You might be surprised by what you find. You might discover something that changes your understanding of the past. You might uncover a secret that has been hidden for decades. Take the time to examine your old photographs. Share them with historians and archivists. Let them help you unlock the stories they contain. The past is waiting to be discovered. All you need to do is look.